This is the Content and AI Podcast, episode number 14. Over the past year and a half, innovative artificial intelligence startups have taken the tech and content worlds by storm. In her position as the CEO of the generative AI platform Writer.com, May Habib has been right in the middle of the excitement and out in front of it. Writer and their clients were deploying LLM-driven generative AI programs inside of large enterprises long before OpenAI's ChatGPT-3 captured the headlines and launched the current wave of AI disruption.
Welcome to the Content and AI Podcast, where experts on artificial intelligence share their wisdom with the content community. Our mission is to demystify and democratize AI, to make its principles and practices accessible to all content practitioners. And now here's your host, Larry Swanson.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 14 of the Content and AI Podcast. I am really delighted today to welcome to the show May Habib. May is the CEO and co-founder at Writer, an app many of you are familiar with. They're just having a great year, and I was excited to get her on the show towards the end of 2023 to talk about topping the MMLU leaderboard with the Palmyra. Their LLM closed a nice funding round. Sounds like things are going well at Writer, May.
Oh, thanks, Larry. It's so nice to come back and chat with you. Yeah, we've had a great year. Thank goodness. I've got our last all hands of the year after this conversation. And so it was definitely nice to look back. We do these weekly updates to the whole company. I write them. And I went back and looked at week 1 and compared it to week 52. And then kind of one's like, oh, let's go back a little further. I went like 2022 week 52 and then 2021 week 52. And yeah, it's awesome to see things build and all the progress.
Yeah. Well, and one thing, and you've been part of that progress because even so ChatGPT, which is where the current kerfuffle is all about, that's barely a year old, but you've been doing Writer is older and Cordova was even older than that, right?
Yeah, well, we've been in the NLP space for a decade, me and Wasim, and starting in machine translation, I think we were able to come to the world of transformers with maybe 2 distinct advantages, I think, over the folks that are in the space now, OpenAI and others as well, included in that. One is we were very much less a technology in search for a problem because we saw so many content challenges in the enterprise that could be solved with AI, having come from translation. And so it allowed us to really take a solution-based kind of outcome-based approach to thinking about how to productize this cool technology versus not. Now, obviously, a general purpose AI-based chat, has captured the imagination and has been, an incredible thing that the OpenAI team has introduced that we obviously didn't think of. But in a lot of ways, what it's done is open up what people thought could be possible with AI, and it's made room for solutions like ours to really explode because we really serve that enterprise need, that very solution specific application that is enterprise ready, is secure. So anyway, it has been a fun road and a really fun 4 years with Writer.
Yeah. And one of the implications of that is as much about this stuff as anybody. In fact, you're sort of you're right up there with OpenAI in terms of your accomplishments and the power of the service you offer. I'm curious, what have you and I think there's a couple of things in this question that I'm hoping to get out of this conversation. One is just the general state of the AI market. Like a lot of what you just said, I think is going to help people kind of ground themselves and feel it. But I think one of my questions is for example, is this just another SaaS app, with the software in the background is an LLM, or will there be fundamentally different things you think that content folks have to consider as they go into working with these tools and working on these tools?
Yeah, I think maybe taking that question a couple of ways. One, the user experience cut of the market, and then the where are dollars being spent cut of the market. And I think it'll allow you to see the gap that we see and that we fill, actually looking at it in these two ways. I think, from an end user perspective, that cut of the market, there is this over chatification of what AI can do, and everything is a freaking dialogue to get stuff out of AI. And it's just so early, and the interfaces obviously shouldn't all be chat UIs, but that's kind of the case right now. And whether somebody gave you a Copilot license or you're personally paying for Chat GPT Enterprise, I think most people aren't getting the value they thought they would, given all of the headlines. And that adoption gap isn't because the capabilities aren't there, right? Because we're building the capabilities. They are freaking crazy magical. And I think, when we chatted last, I said probably something along the lines, if this was 18 months ago, I probably said, Larry, generative AI is like giving everybody an assistant and a chief of staff, right? I mean, that's not what it's like anymore. It's like giving you the best version of yourself, like 20 years expert into the future, right? Like there is so much, even in 18 months, so much that the models can do. Anyway, all to say that the end user experience cut of the market is super under optimized. And like today, despite all of the hubbub, I can't go into my Salesforce and say, I'm in London in January. Who should I see of our deals that are closing in Q1? Right. So even the AI that's supposed to get built into all of our systems of record, like, isn't really doing the things that we want it to do. Folks who are trying to connect, Copilot to their Microsoft data aren't seeing the kind of answers they would like. And I think, power users who have figured out how to get a lot of value from Chat GPT are, but your median user really isn't. So that's kind of like that cut of the market. In terms of like where there are real dollars being spent here, I think the enterprise is probably over investing in the infrastructure and the like utility model layer, and are trying to rebuild from scratch kind of like every use case. And there are a lot of things that are breaking about that experience. And the total cost of ownership, I think, isn't making sense for a lot of companies. The accuracy and business impact of some of these pilots and POCs isn't materializing. So next year is going to be like get real year, which is exciting. I think we'll see a lot more exciting end user interfaces and experience that build on kind of the toy making and piloting of tools this year. And then I think enterprises are going to be really looking for just more comprehensive solutions to filling generative AI needs internally.
Yeah, a couple of follow-ups that like the first thing, like to the example you gave about like not being able to get what you want out of Salesforce, that the information you want is in there, that the data is available. And similarly with the Copilot, and it's theoretically integrated with all the Microsoft suites and tools and probably all their BI stuff and whatever else, and that's not working. What's the disconnect there? How is this not, how is this going to be stitched together, I guess?
Yeah. So there is a connecting the models to your data is done through either fine tuning or retrieval augmented generation, or a combination of both. The context windows on these models, including ours, we had our customer conference last week, and we announced a 200,000 token window for Palmyra and 30 languages, so lots of improvements. But even with those capabilities, fine-tuning for various use cases has a ton of benefits. Connecting the models to structured and unstructured data have a ton of applications, including these knowledge retrieval and kind of smart enterprise search types of applications. And the kind of standard vector database based approach where you're basically creating a bunch of embeddings, storing them in a vector DB, and then depending on, what the prompt is, right? Like sending back results to the LLM from the vector DB, the accuracy rates on enterprise scale and enterprise state data just really aren't cutting the mustard. And we think a lot of that has to do with sort of like a missing knowledge graph layer. Nobody really wants to do like ontologies of old. And so what we have done is basically train a separate LLM to build knowledge graphs of folks' data. And so like that is what we call full stack generative AI. So you're not having to recreate all of that yourself and rebuild it. And the benefits are both like you're not calling out to a bunch of third-party services, and like you get a platform that understands your data a lot better than kind of throwing all of it into an embeddings model and hoping for the best. So what is old is new again, Larry. But
Yeah.
LLMs.
Yeah, but and as you're saying, as you talk about that, one of the things you mentioned there is knowledge graphs, and I don't know if you said the word ontology, but that's what kind of organizes a knowledge graph. And you
Yeah,
said something the other day when we were pre-talking about this about ontologies and the future of content. Is that the practice that gives us a chance to get the right, to organize the knowledge that better informs these tools?
I think nobody wants to go back to kind of like manually and analog building ontologies.
Yeah.
I do think folks with ontological expertise and like content mapping and strategy understanding and knowledge are going to be really critical. We see them be really critical to helping get these digital assistants and knowledge retrieval applications to the level of quality that everybody really wants to see them at. And so we are using AI to actually build the relationships between entities. This is happening at such a massive scale that you need AI to do it. But I do think like for a lot of use cases, we are going to need help with folks who've got that expertise kind of zeroing in on what data might actually be causing a bunch of confusion or like where our wrong answers getting kind of traced back to. So everyone is still so early in these kinds of applications. And it's still there's still very much a honeymoon period, I think. Getting to 100% accuracy, we tend to ship things with our customers once 80% of answers are at 90% or above kind of accuracy and completion. But really like over time working and improving these models, I don't think is going to be about making the LLMs themselves bigger or smarter. It is really going to be about like better shaping the data that's used for retrieval augmented generation.
Right. And you're reminding me now something we talked about. This was in a year and a half ago when we talked. You said something about that you felt like you were helping to usher in a new type of content practitioner, this half data scientist, half editorial leader. A lot of what you just said, is that a job description yet, or how's that unfolding?
Well, that's actually so what I just talked about is a different job description. It's like AI ontologist. So that's what we'll talk about in a year. What we were talking about last year, or a year and a half ago now, we actually had our first conference for those people, Larry, last week. We called it the AI Leaders Forum. And it is people whose job now is scaling up generative AI programs. And it's a lot of folks with this mix of left brain, right brain. They're editorially minded. They know what excellent looks like, but they are executives with like real stakeholder pull. They understand how to make stuff exciting, how to like get adoption, how to showcase and evangelize generative AI use cases, how to apply generative AI principles to problems, right? Like what we really want are people who are reinventing, re-architecting how work gets done AI first. And a lot of those early writer users have become those people at their companies. And we had them all together in San Francisco last week. So it was really fun. And yeah, it's absolutely a job now. If you go to our blog, writer.com/blog, you'll find the AI, I think we call it product AI program director job description,
Interesting.
because it
And
absolutely is a job.
probably a lot of overlap in that one with like content operations, I'm going to guess. Um, or is there?
Let me think about that. I do think there is some. I'm Anna Maria from Salesforce is coming to mind. She's got a lot of content ops experience. She plays this role at Salesforce, and she also has got a lot of like tech stack rollout experience, right? So,
Yeah.
really being able to track just new behavior change,
Hmm.
right?
Well, I
And
wonder,
encourage it.
yeah, I wonder, is it more like, because it kind of reminds me when you were talking about like the evangelism element and the need to sell it, it reminds me of like design systems or other like new headless content management systems where you kind of like it's not done after you architect and build it. You got to keep promoting it. Is that kind of what you're getting at with the
Yeah.
evangelism? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you go to headless, because I've actually borrowed that concept as we've described what Writer allows technology teams to do, right? Writer is a full stack generative AI platform that allows companies to build dozens of different generative AI use cases and workflows on one platform. And you can take any one of those applications and run it in any of your clouds in your own virtual private cloud. And so I have come to describe that as headless AI apps. And so, yeah, the analogies with headless CMS are definitely there. What were you asking about
Well, no,
headless?
well, and actually, let me follow up on that a little bit because that kind of
Yeah.
follows on like the whole just the rise of decoupled architectures like composable commerce
Yes.
and headless CMSs and all that, and it totally makes sense the way you just said that AI capabilities like this, like having an AI, a general purpose or general purpose-ish AI platform as part of that mix of your enterprise architecture. That just seems like a no-brainer at this point. What do those APIs look like? What do you actually, so what is it like? Because content, I do structured content and content modeling for a living, so I know how that stuff looks, and I've seen like, other similar architectures. So the API calls, is that like question answering stuff, or is it more than that? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, what I mean by API calls is the applications themselves are containerized. So like one app could be a sales enablement tool for your salespeople to basically query against all of the marketing material for ICP messaging and case studies. Anna at Commvault, the CMO there, she's built a really cool app for her salespeople. That's one app. That's one use case. Another use case that people could have built in Writer is an app that answers RFPs, that is trained on all the RFPs your company has answered before. That's one application. And so you may want one in AWS and one in GCP for whatever reason, or that's where the data is, et cetera. And that's what we call kind of headless.
Got it. Okay, yeah, that makes perfect. That it's like the capabilities of those LLMs can drive any number of and access. And it's about equally. What's the data look like under this? I guess is there like is the application does each application kind of bring its own data, or is there like a emerging enterprise data strategy going on?
So, data, I have talked a lot about, I hate the word data as it relates to um, generative AI, um, because it's not very specific. And so data could mean the training data inside of the foundation model, right? And you don't really, as a user or the buyer of AI products, even as an enterprise buyer of a very composable and auditable full stack generative AI platform like Writer, like you don't have a lot of like say in what goes in there, right? You can audit it, make sure there's no copyrighted data, like walk through the legality of how we built it. Like these are all things that our enterprise customers can do. But that's like ship has sailed months ago, right? On that. Then from a data perspective, you've got data that you use for retrieval augmented generation. And so that might be, structured or unstructured data that you are connecting to a particular use case or application that you have built. It could also mean data could also mean the examples or information you are uploading as part of a prompt, whether that is documents or just kind of like plain text. Data could be what the LLM outputs to your user. And so what we have seen be real kind of state-of-the-art enterprise grade is actually having a kind of secure and protect approach to all of the different buckets of data that you are interacting with when you are using a generative AI application or introducing a generative AI application.
Interesting. Those distinctions are really important. I think as you outline them, each of those has like a different sort of intent and purpose and use in these systems. How is that? Is this where like data science and data engineering come in? Is that what percentage of the folks working on these kind of things fall in those buckets, like data science and data engineering?
So I think the data teams capabilities with respect to generative AI are really cut across a wide spectrum, Larry. And there are folks who really get it and folks who are, still trying to quote, like, clean all of our data for AI. And I don't think that they really understand necessarily what that means. And I think they're probably under consuming generative AI in favor of sort of cleaning data. Because when you're fine tuning or producing examples for a lot of the, like, especially content generation use cases, you don't need that much data, which means you don't need to spend months cleaning stuff. And there is clean data, i.e. clean examples sitting on business users' desktops and in their inboxes and like, in their folders. And so, it's not like it doesn't rise to the occasion of like this massive, large scale data science project. We've seen incredible results, even at kind of high volume, no more human in the loop type of use cases with, 15, 20, 40 examples, right, worth of training data. From a retrieval perspective, that looks a lot different. And there, like, I really haven't seen the like data cleaning projects really do the kinds of things that you need to actually make retrieval easier. Like, what would really freaking help? Tables not being broken up across 2 pages. Like, no data science team is going to go do that. Models really struggle with that, right? Like the way that you actually kind of understand how to pluck out an answer. A lot of enterprise data is in tables, especially the kind of stuff that agents need to be answering or looking at. If you're sort of like a level 2, level 3 agent doing, more kind of higher level work on these calls. So, there's definitely a space, of course, for data science in generative AI. I think the function, is likely to evolve, right? To be kind of generative AI first, versus kind of adopting some of the techniques that served previous generations of AI.
Got it. Interesting. Hey, I want to go back to something you said earlier too about ontologies and building ontologies with Gen AI. Because that echoes what I'm hearing. I go to the Knowledge Graph conference every year, and last year I went
Oh my God, I
expecting.
want to go to this conference. Please invite me. I didn't know there was a knowledge graph conference. That
Oh
sounds
God,
great.
you should speak. I'll connect after this.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. But I went last year. It happened in May. Like 6 months into the whole ChatGPT thing, and I went there thinking like, oh, thank God, knowledge graphs are going to come to the rescue of these stupid, stochastic parrots. And instead, all the excitement was about building ontologies with AI. So, and it sounds like you're doing that. Can you tell me about like how does that? Because like in classic ontology engineering, you kind of come in with like a business intent and domain knowledge at the top, and then you look at your data instances and kind of go to the middle and build an ontology. But it sounds like you're like the way you describe this, I'm picturing more of a bottom-up approach. Is that accurate, or there must be some human input and insight in there as well?
I mean, it's very tactical. Like you are building a Q&A app for your salespeople in the field. So what needs to go into that knowledge graph for that writer use case is everything you onboard those people with. And it might be like 80 PDFs and 6 different websites, like internal websites, and then maybe some PowerPoints. Like that's the data, right? Um, in insurance, a knowledge graph could contain every policy document for millions of users. And that is a very different type of uh, uh, set of kind of logic and work to get RAG there to be really high quality and retrieve the right stuff and answer the questions the right way. And so, like, the use cases are starting to bundle up and get repeatable. But we are learning alongside our customers. And that's what I think makes this space so fun and interesting is how collaborative uh, customers and tech vendors really have to be to build stuff that goes into production. We are building the capabilities. We are understanding what they do. We get to pattern match. But the real understanding, rubber hits the road only when you're actually looking at a set of questions that people have asked your app that we answered wrong, right? And that's what sends you down the data rabbit hole and has you improving the knowledge graph so that we can answer those questions better and more accurately. So, I think that will become a data job. And I don't think that job is getting done by data scientists today, if that's your question.
Hmm. Yeah, well, no, exactly. And where that work happens, that kind of goes back to that thing you said a year and a half ago. Like that was one example of new job. There's a whole bunch of new
Yeah.
work being. Hey, that's actually, and this is something that I like try to address in every episode. There is so much anxiety in the content world now about, oh God, AI is coming for my job, and seems like there's some reason to think that, but I think that all the half of what we've talked about seems like examples of new kinds of jobs that are being created. Do some of those jobs exist at Writer now?
Yeah, well, what a great question. So, our stack looks like pre-sale solution architects, then post-sale technical account managers, and they're really doing the same job. Um, we have built both a low-code and a no-code console to speed up the work of building these generative AI applications. And kind of further up the stack, we have customer engineers and then AI engineers who all look at and see customer problems. And so it's solving these problems at different levels of abstraction is what that stack kind of does. Customer engineers are building kind of building blocks that our solution architects and our technical account managers use to build specific customer solutions. Then the AI engineers and software engineers are taking as many of those as possible and abstracting them so that customers can use them themselves, right? And turning it into tooling, additional tooling that we all can use. So the data work, I think, is really happening, alongside all of that. And some of it becomes building blocks. I'll give you just like, an example, like silly examples, or not silly, but like, more trivial examples, like understanding tables in PDFs separately from tables inside of that we pull out of web pages, right? Or tools that make sure that something is a specific character count or a specific grade level. Like those are all building blocks that can be applied by our customers and by us as we build these solutions. And those are the data work, are jobs being created, right? That sort of tuck into our work right now, that our GSIs are doing for some of our customers, that our customers are doing for themselves. The annotation work, oh, we haven't even gotten to that. There are a lot of jobs here. And I think what is fun is watching programs grow up around generative AI. A big part of what we were talking about last week, as I heard kind of AI program managers like talk to each other, is how they get more project management staffing for kind of keeping up with all of the use cases and the rollout and the change management. And I think, on kind of the back end of that, like really building those use cases out, I think in 6 months to a year, people will be asking, how do we get more kind of content people looking at the annotation data, looking at how we scale the building of these use cases, how we build, the knowledge graphs that form, yes, AI ontologies, but like choosing what data goes in there is going to be, step one to having a really high quality AI graph, right?
Yeah, that's May, I can't believe it. We're coming up on time already. This
Oh,
always goes
wow.
way too quick. I would love. There's so many rabbit holes that I've kept us out of some of them, but there's still many I'd like to go down. But anyhow, so we'll have to talk later in the year, I hope. But before we wrap today, is there anything anything that's come up in the conversation that you want to revisit, or that you just want to make sure we talk about before we wrap up?
No, I think this was a great conversation, Larry, and we went really deep and hopefully gave your listeners a lot to think about.
Yeah, I think I definitely did. Well, thank you so much, May. Oh, one very last thing. If folks want to follow you or connect online, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I'm May at Writer is my email, and LinkedIn is where I'm most active.
Okay, cool. I will put that in the show notes as well, but good to have it
Okay,
in the recording. All right.
awesome.
For show notes and to sign up for our newsletter, visit our website at contentandai.com. And please rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for listening.